Welcome to the Timmy Willis Show. My name is Timmy Willis, and I'll be your host for today's show. Today we have a very exciting drummer with us today. He goes by the name of Bob Breen. How you doing today, Bob?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on, Timmy.
Thanks for coming on the show. First of all, Bob, I'd like to ask you, what was it about drums that got you interested in the first place?
I think everything. I go back to when my dad used to take us to the St. Patrick's Day parade, and you'd feel the concussion and the percussion and the loudness, and you get to strike them and swing your arms. It's a combination of athletic and sonic. I just loved them. It was an immediate thing, and I always preferred drums to everything else musical.
Now, do you remember how old you were when you first experienced that?
Yeah, probably about 4 or 5. And when I was about 5, I got one of those little toy drum kits that are really not musical instruments, but I used to strap the bass drum on my back and walk around the neighborhood of Avalon on those old concrete sidewalks, beating the bass drum and marching up and down the street like a kid.
You know what, that's interesting because I have a similar story too. I mean, I got interested in the drums the same way, by going to the parades, man. Yeah. And actually, my mother bought me a little blue mesh drum set, and I used to disassemble it. And I gave one of my buddies the bass drum, and I would have the snare, and another buddy the tom-tom, and we would march up and down the street too, man. That's funny how we correspond with that already, you know. But look, did you play drums in school?
Oh yeah, that's when I started to really learn. 7th grade had band, and I was, believe it or not, impacted. I had an older brother, played bass and guitar. And he always had buddies that were musicians, and I just wanted to play music. I didn't care. I wanted to play music. Turned out that the school where I was at needed some kids for drums, so I took drum lessons and started in 7th grade, and we had good teachers that helped us. We learned a lot, and we advanced pretty rapidly, private lessons. By the time I was 14, I was playing in a polka band, although I'm not a polka musician. We made money, and I was into the money because playing drums was a lot better than working McDonald's or gas stations, and it paid a lot more.
Right.
Yeah, it got me started.
Okay, well, what kind of music were you playing in the 7th grade when you was playing in school?
Well, that was your typical concert band with like brass, woodwinds, percussion, trumpets, trombones, baritone horns, and then we'd go up into the marching band and play halftime shows for our high school teams when they played football.
Okay.
And we had a great band director who is no longer in the living, a gentleman named Danny Poupard, who played most of the shows, like the ice shows. He played the Civic Light operas, and him and our teachers would bring us down and be in the pit, in the orchestras, which was an incredible experience as a young age, to be down there watching Man of La Mancha in the Nixon Theater with my drum teacher then, a man named Billy Price, who went to the Manhattan School of Music, played a lot of Broadway work, and was really good at the orchestral percussion.
Right.
But it just gave us a lot of steam, and they fired us up.
Yeah. Now, which do you prefer? I mean, did you prefer the marching band style, or did you prefer like the symphonic orchestra type of playing, or you like them both?
Wow. They're both so different. I like them both a lot. I loved marching band because as a youngster, you're growing up and you're going through all that stuff, including as you develop, you got so much energy. And you go down the street, you're marching, you're beating your drums, you let out all that energy in a good and positive way. And the friendships in the musical area are, to this day, most of my best personal friends go back to that band.
Oh, okay.
They're all over the country now, but we're still in touch, and the friendships are just cemented together, I think, by doing music.
Right. Now, is it safe to say that being that you were playing those styles of music, that you learned how to read music?
Very safe. It was necessary because you couldn't play what we played unless you could read the parts. And we were lucky we had our teacher who knew a lot of guys from the orchestras he worked in. So we had good private teachers that taught us starting from the rudiments to the more advanced snare drum technique, and then ultimately to playing drum kit. One of the boys was real good on timpani, had an excellent ear, he could tune them good, and we learned some of the xylophone and stuff. So we got actually a pretty good exposure to percussion, though my favorite thing was always playing drums.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. It sounds like took more than just class time. I mean, did you practice at home on your own?
Yes.
Yeah?
I think the neighbors hated it. I had this drum set, and I was playing all the time upstairs in my bedroom, making more noise. But people put up with it, and they were nice. My poor parents put up with it. They were nice. Mm-hmm. But I loved to play the drums. I still do, and this is 42 years later.
Right. Now, you mentioned rudiments.
Yes.
For like a young drummers that might be watching today, how important would you say rudiments are as far as someone who wants to learn how to play drums?
I have a feeling they're very important, and I think I've played long enough to the point where I don't think about them, but I've learned them all. And I'm certain a lot of times when I'm playing whatever I'm playing, a rudiment just flows right out because it's the best sticking or the best phrase on percussion that will meet the needs of the music. And it's a relationship now where it's a learned behavior and then it's a hearing behavior. They come together and the body just seems to follow the ear. Mm-hmm. And you play what fits. But the rudiments are critical before you really know how to play musician-like. That gives you structure, and you can play those things and sound good even though you're not yet matured to where the ear and the music are doing a more artful thing.
Okay, now, would you agree that repetition plays a part in it? I mean, as far as when I say repetition, I mean, say if you're learning how to play a 5-stroke roll.
Yes.
You know, I have a young student now, and I encourage him to play it 50 times. You know,
At
and
least.
then after you play it 50 times, you're just getting warmed up.
Right.
You know, repetition, to get used to playing it that way, you know.
I totally agree for a variety of reasons. First, the body gets used to doing the motion and it starts to become a non-conscious behavior where you're grooving. You're not listening and playing ticky-tacky. You're just playing like fluid, like motion without edges and smooth sound. Mm-hmm. And the repetition is a requirement to get the muscles conditioned to do the work and to get them to do it without any forced necessity of sound where the sound is smoother and sweeter and more musical because you don't have to think about it anymore. You do it.
It's like a natural reaction.
It's a response to the sonic events that are around you. And as my most recent and great beloved teacher, Mr. Joe Harris, I believe taught me in my lessons, I had some chops, but I learned how to listen. And you got 2 ears.
Right.
And that tells you something. You got to take that information in, and as you hear music, the more all that repetition became ingrained in you, the more you just play without thinking about playing the drums. You play by thinking about the total sound of the ensemble, and your drumming then integrates into it without being an imposition on the music. Rather, it sweetens it and punctuates it.
Oh, okay. Now, let me ask you this. How important would you say discipline is? And when I mean discipline, I mean as far as going down the basement and playing on a day that you don't even feel like it, and practicing and rehearsing and going over your lessons and stuff. I mean, to discipline yourself to do that. How important would you say that is?
Very important, especially when we were youngsters. How many distractions? You could go play ball, you could go take a ride, kids would go out and somebody had a car, you could do this, that, or the other thing. And I guess for me it was lucky or fortunate. I really had this passion. I love beating the crap out of my drums and having a good time. I could do that, and I guess it's good for the sanity and the soul. It works out a lot of the frustrations, and it's physical, like playing a sport, so you get a great feeling. But the discipline is also true because when I took lessons, a lot of my teachers had me playing music that I didn't like, but they knew I had to learn how to play music I didn't like to really learn how to play music. Because it's easy to play songs you like.
Right.
But when you're playing something that is difficult, that you're not comfortable with, that you're not familiar with, and you got to learn to play it in a musician-like way, that's discipline. And that brings you up a level to where you're much more of a professional and not just somebody that bashes a set of drums in the garage.
Right, right. Okay, now, Bob, you've played with some of the biggest names in the business. Now, how have you benefited from reading music?
Absolutely. I'll even go to right now. Albeit I'm a volunteer, I'm doing Jesus Christ Superstar with the St. Sebastian Youth Ministries. My son's a senior. We're doing what to me is one of the hardest reading jobs I've ever done. It's Andrew Lloyd Webber. He jumps around from 4/4 to 7/8 to 2/4 to 6/8 to 7/4 to 5/4 to 1/4. And if you can't read music, you can't play this stuff.
Right.
And even a lot of the gigs I've been real lucky to play in some of the nice big bands around Pittsburgh, you show up, they give you a book, they call tunes by the number, you just have to play.
Right.
And you can't fake it if you don't know the tunes. And all of those tunes were written and played before I was around, and without reading capability, a lot of work you could never get. And you even mentioned bands I've been with, and you and I have worked together on shows, like working for the Drifters. They throw a book at you, you get 20 minutes or so to talk with the piano player conductor, and you don't really get to learn it. You got to be able to read it.
Right.
And those are some of my fondest gigs, because those bands have been a blast. I grew up listening to those hits, and I got to grow up and play those hits, and it's been a real cool thing in my life.
Okay. Well, now, you mentioned Mr. Joe Harris as one of your teachers. Who are some of your other teachers that taught you down through the years?
Okay, at the very beginning, my band director had a friend who was mostly an English teacher, but he was an alum of the Pitt Band, and he had been a drummer all his life. He was the rudimental drum teacher. Man's name was Tony Arabia, and he did formations for our marching band and taught the drummers private lessons. We had to pay him, obviously, but he put us in the standard material, which in those days were the Rube Bank, elementary, method, intermediate, etc., but had us learn the rudiments, learn to read the page, and the consequence was we could play in concert band and marching band, and later we had a jazz ensemble in the high school, and we could get through music that if you can't read music, you could just not participate.
Yeah.
So it's the turnkey to so much extra than just learning by ear.
Right. Well, you know, we talked about playing. At this time, would you like to do some playing for us?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
What do we want to do, Timmy?
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Well,
we're going to fade right here.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to fade to black. Now, we got Bob Breen here on the drum set. He's going to do some playing for us. And our friends at Pianos and Stuff was kind enough to provide him with some drumsticks. I'd like to give it to you at this time.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, our friends at Piano Stuff, our underwriter.
Okay, now, first of all, would you demonstrate the funk beat for us?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right, all right.
And on and on. Funk's
All
pretty
right.
wide open.
Yeah.
That's like Tower of Power, Average White Band, James Brown.
Right.
Parliament.
I heard that James Brown in there, man. I feel good.
The
you know,
Godfather.
Yeah. Oh, what about salsa? Something a little different.
Well, let's go salsa. We're going down south of Mexico. Salsa. Mostly, what would that be? Cuban, Puerto Rican, South American?
Right there.
It's dance music. Upbeat stuff on the hi-hat.
Yeah, I see that.
It's the dance.
Yeah. Well, what about a little bossa nova?
That takes us to Brazil usually, and it's real sweet and real mellow, and it is danceable. Girl from Ipanema comes to mind.
Yeah.
Soft and sexy and sensual sounds.
Yeah. Now that was nice and tasty. And what about something hard like rock?
Well, when we go to rock, I usually kind of think of something crazy hard and
Well, you know Led Zeppelin, I think Led Zeppelin's coming to town.
The Zeps, yep.
So maybe they might, you know, the drummer might get sick, so, you know, let's get a little bit of rock in here.
All right. Feel better.
Hey, feel good now? Got that out, huh?
Yeah, all that angst.
Okay, now what about jazz waltz?
Ooh, yeah. That brings me usually to the Evens and the Odds, an old Brubeck album where they had a jazzy waltz, and that's where I learned that waltzes don't have to be ticky-tacky. They can be... They kind of move instead of... That's their waltz.
Right, all right.
Grooves instead of
yeah.
boom, bop, bop, boom, bop,
right.
bop.
Right. Now what about mambo?
Mambo. This is definitely south of the border. Mambo.
Mambo for you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You know, Bob, this is a very interesting looking drum kit, man. Could you tell us about this kit?
Yeah, it's called a Thai Go Kit. I'm not an endorsed artist or anything. I bought this on my own. It's designed for individuals like me that play mostly one show, one night, or one gig. You pack it up, you tear it down. It is very compact. It's made out of basswood and birch. Mm-hmm. So these are small drum sizes that get pretty big fat tones. And a guy named Ray Iotti from Canada, who had a drum company called Iotti Drums, for obvious reasons, designed this company and this concept. They actually are built in the Orient. They're well built in Taiwan, but they're a special drum set for people like me that have a lot of years on their back and also want something that's quick and easy to tear down, fits in a car trunk. You don't have that bass drum sitting in the back seat tempting people to break into your car.
Yeah.
But they're a blast to play, and they're very unorthodox, but they're fun.
So what type of wood shells you said they are?
Bass and birch.
Okay. Is that your preferred wood shell?
I like maple, too. I have at home a very old Ludwig drum set that's solid maple. They're bigger and more difficult to carry around. They do sound better, but for the difference and work and the portability, these really deliver. Mm-hmm. They're happy.
Okay.
They sound good.
Now, I'm looking at your cymbals here, and they look all Zildjian.
Yes, indeedy. They are all Zildjian. Unusual here, I have a K Zildjian made in Turkey on the bottom, a Vita Zildjian, American Zildjian here, 15-inch. Mm-hmm. Most people play 13s or 14s, and I know when we were setting up, you immediately spotted that.
Yeah.
This is an 18-inch Zildjian, has holes drilled in it. Used to have the rivets for sizzle. Mm-hmm. Sizzle cymbals kind of went out, and I took the rivets out. This is an old Vita Zildjian 20, and as these cymbals get older, the metal kind of ages and gets to be better. And this is a newer 16-inch Zildjian Crash. It's kind of a splashy cymbal, gets a bright sound, it chokes easy, and mm-hmm. It's a wonderful cymbal. They just sound musical together.
Yeah. Cool. Well, what about your bass pedal there?
Well, that's the Thai bass pedal. This drum set came with all the hardware, and I first saw Thai drums when I was watching a video of Michael McDonald. He has a really good female drummer they call Honey Babe, and she plays these Thai drums, the bigger drum set. But this pedal and their hardware really have a great touch, and this is lighter weight hardware so that when I'm carrying my case, I'm not struggling hurting my lower back. Mm-hmm. This pedal has great touch, it's lightweight, and it springs back, and It kicks.
Okay. Now, as far as your bass drum playing technique, are you more of a heel player or a toe player, or you fluctuate?
Well, I think I fluctuate. If something's more like the Led Zeppelin hard sound, I'm likely to hit with the toe because I can put more weight. But if it's light and maybe I'm playing something soft and gentle, I'll keep that heel down so I don't hit the drum too hard and overpower the instruments that are supposed to be heard, like maybe your saxophone or whoever's playing the lead.
Okay. Well, Bob, let me ask you this. I mean, you have experience in playing along with sequences.
Yes, a lot of it, yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, one of my long-term friends and colleagues in music is our mutual friend, Walt Maddox, who does orchestral recordings, and we were using a rhythm section to the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra on reel-to-reel tape. And that's when we first met. We were doing shows, doing a tribute to Nat King Cole. And what that required was to put on a headset, and that orchestra tape is your metronome. And to make it even more difficult, it was a conducted orchestra. It's not in an absolute tempo. So it requires extraordinary listening skills to get where you are, because if you're a bit of a beat off, you sound like a train wreck and it's not going to be good. So it's an extreme discipline, harder than a metronome, but lots of experience. And as you know, we played our shows probably hundreds of times. And besides making some money, we made some real good friends and did things together that bond us and make us permanent brothers.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this now.
Yes.
We're flipping the page back to the beginning. You know, when you were starting out, did you play along with records when you at home when you was first starting to play?
All the time. You give me my favorite records, and I'm playing the drums to the records as loud as I can play them up in my room, making noise, scaring the neighbors, and maybe making my parents go down to the basement to hide out from it all. But yes, that's a good way to learn songs, and it's a good way to learn how professionals play, because you're playing along to their sounds.
What about the timing, your timing? You think it helped with your timing?
It has to, because if you can't stay with the record, your timing is not good. And if you fall off with the record, you don't have that discipline to stay in meter. And meter is what the drummer's supposed to deliver.
Right. Okay, now one thing I noticed that you're a composer.
To some extent, yeah. Some
lyricist,
pop songs, yes.
Yeah, lyricist. You're a publishing member of ASCAP.
Yes.
Also a member of the American Federation of Musicians.
Yep.
You served 3 terms as vice president of the Pittsburgh Musicians Union. That's pretty impressive. Now, would you tell us a little bit about all that?
All that is,
well, let's take the composer.
If you want to be a musician at a professional level, there's more than playing music, there's creating music. And I have some real good friends who are very creative, and we wrote a lot of pop music together, and we decided, well, since we wrote it, let's copyright it. And once we learned how to copyright, we learned that, well, if you want to collect royalties on it, because we made some CDs, if you ever make money, which our CDs were not real well received, but we made them and sold a little bit, got some airplay. Well, you got to be a publisher with BMI or ASCAP to collect your royalties. In case you get lucky and a song hits, you got to do that. So basically, most of my music's written with one of 2 buddies of mine that we go back years, and they're very creative guys. But I did all this stuff as far as copywriting and doing the publishing, and we share rights. And we produced some CDs and some fun songs that never made us any money to speak of, but we had a great time doing it. And if someday any of these tunes catch on, our kids at least might get a few bucks out of it.
Right.
As far as the Musicians Union, I've been in it since I was a teenager. My high school band director sponsored me, and in those days you had to be in the union to play the joints that are out in Pittsburgh. And in those days we were playing shows at the hotels downtown. There was a place called the Holiday House. There was the Twin Coaches. A lot of places that had shows, and I was in R&B groups in those days where the bands that came in might be like the Stylistics or the Delphonics, and we were the warm-up and break band. But the union was there, and they'd come around, check your card, make sure you paid. The consequence is, besides those formalities, the union has a very good monthly newsletter. You learn a lot about keeping yourself up health-wise, keep yourself educated, stay ahead of knowing what's the newest technology. And as we know in our lifetimes, technology in the music business has grown by incredible leaps and bounds. And I know you do the technology because you've worked sound, lights, and all the stuff that keeps the shows running. But I think that all contributes to helping you be more professional, and it's a greater creativity when you write and play.
Okay. Now, a publishing member of ASCAP, I mean, how does that tie into all that? What does that mean?
It means if our CDs had sold, we would have made money.
Okay.
ASCAP collects the royalties.
Right.
And so if it goes into a television show, a movie, even a commercial, or any venue where it's used, and they even survey airtime, one of our CDs got a limited exposure in college radio in various parts of the country. If we sold enough and played enough, we'd have made some checks.
Okay. Okay.
It helps you make your money.
Okay. Now, you served 3 terms as the vice president of the Pittsburgh Musicians Union. What was that like?
Well,
I mean, what did you do? I mean,
the union tries to provide a better climate and condition for working musicians to have work, get more work, get paid for their work, and get paid as well as possible. Plus, through the musicians' union system, working musicians can be part of a pension program, so they have long-term benefits, and when they are in a senior level of their life, they have financial viability to live. They're not just out of work making no money, they have a pension. So there are those benefits. A lot of people don't join the union and play lots of jobs, and that's what they choose to do. And I got in young when I had to be in, and now I'm in it. And granted, I'm not as involved as I used to be. I just feel like it's my duty as a professional to belong to the professional organization.
Okay, good. Now, let's talk a little bit more about playing, if you don't mind. What about drumstick grips? You know, so a lot of people ask me sometimes, how do you hold the drumsticks? You know, there's a couple different types of grips. Could you show us some?
Absolutely. The standard grip most teachers teach us has the left hand putting the stick right between the fingers, and the weight is at the thumb. And you control, with the upper fingers, the stick from flying out of control. And the wrist is supposed to do most of the work. You're not supposed to play like this. You're supposed to be able to work the stick with your finger control, which you can do. The right hand, my grip is always this, where the power and control is between the thumb and the forefinger, and these fingers control the movement. So if you see how this stick goes, without moving my wrist and arms, I can play. See how the forearm's almost going nowhere, but and there's another grip for left hand called matched grip, which is the same as the right hand. And back in the 70s when disco was popular, what I used to do is have a conga set to my left and timbales up here to be able to reach backwards and hit those drums on the old Donna Summer songs and things like that that had all that Latin stuff. I needed the reach, and I started using matched, which in some countries is the traditional symphonic grip. And it turned out now I just blend the grip based on where I feel comfortable, depending on the song and where I'm reaching my sticks to hit what cymbals or what instruments I might have in addition to just the drum kit.
So what does the matched grip look like?
It's the same thing. They call it matched because it's matched.
Okay.
The right and left hand are both holding thumb and forefinger. These under fingers control the stick, and with those fingers and grips, you can get a lot of speed without even moving your arms. If you notice, hardly any of my upper body moved.
Right.
And that's pretty much activity down at the snare drum without having to work too hard. Plus, the better you get at doing that, the more notes you can play without hurting yourself or overworking. And it also, the sticks hit the head on a better angle and you get better tone.
Okay. Now I noticed during that flurry you just played for us right there, I heard some rim shots in there.
Well,
could you tell us what a rim shot is and maybe demonstrate?
Yeah, that's an excellent question because I do them all the time and don't think about them. That's your snare drum. But when you rim shot, you hit the rim, the steel rim here, and the head at the same time. And it gives you that sharpness. And when you're playing certain backbeats, like James Brown, for example, when you feel good, you're going. It has more edge to it, and it cuts, it gives you a stronger backbeat, gives the band a better pocket. The whole groove has a lot more going on that feels good. People that like to dance, they're going to feel that backbeat, and that keeps everything chug-a-lugging.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine, he used to play, every beat was a rim shot. And he went bankrupt, man, buying drumsticks.
He'd wear out his sticks.
Wearing out sticks.
Well, I've had sticks that wear out where I crack against the steel rim, and eventually I wear them out. I don't break many sticks, but I think that's because I had good instructors that taught me how to hit a drum without hurting the head or the stick. But you can wear out drumsticks doing that, but the rim shot does give you that crack. That adds a lot of niceness to the backbeat, especially on funk, R&B, rock and roll.
Right. Now, there's another set of strikers, I should call them right now, called a set of brushes. We've done doing all the playing with the sticks. Could you pull out the brushes and maybe let's talk about them for a minute?
Well, these are pretty cool. It's just, well, maybe not a coincidence. These are also the Vic Firth brand. He's a percussionist from up in Boston. I'm not sure if he's in the symphony or the Boston Pops, but he's just about perfected sticks and drum instruments that play the drum. But a lot of folks don't know brushes anymore. I don't know if it's because they don't get exposed to them, but brushes are great for light music. And truthfully, you could play some pretty good stuff on brushes, but they're soft and gentle, so if you're doing even like a... And they can explode, too. You can play kind of a samba like... So they go from delicate to triple forte. I guess when I was growing up, my teachers knew how to do this, and they taught me this, and it was part of my lessons. But there was a lot of jobs that I played that were real quiet jazz trios, where if you didn't keep it down low, they'd throw you out. So these brushes have made me a bunch of money.
Right, exactly.
As a drummer.
There was a guy, he was known to tell his drummers, he said, "The day I hear you, you're fired." You know, so as long as I don't hear you, you got a job. You know.
Also, with these things, you can do nice things like if you want a little, almost sounds like a bell tree, or, and also for gongs. So you can do little tricks with both ends of these and the handles because they got that soft sound, almost like a soft mallet.
Okay, now let's talk a little bit about this interesting configuration here, the hi-hat.
Oh, we like hi-hats.
Yeah, could you demonstrate a little hi-hat playing for us?
Yeah, the most known hi-hat sound is your basic jazz beat. Or, back to Donna Summers, disco. Pittsburgher we're certainly an admiration of. The late Max Roach was one of the world's great hi-hat soloists. He used to have some stuff he would do on hi-hat that I've seen in movies and on tape. But he could play the hi-hat solo and go on for stretches of time, and he would get so many different sounds because you can tighten it up and it raises, loosen it up. You can practically play a song melodically on a hi-hat, particularly a virtuoso such as I was, relating to. But hi-hat's an extraordinary thing. Plus, it's the backbeat, which the backbeat is where the rim shot is. But it's the backbeat, and this chick sound is what people think of when they think of the hi-hat.
So when you're playing a rhythm and maybe you're riding on your ride, do you keep time with your hi-hat sometimes?
Sometimes I do, and then sometimes I'm playing like on a salsa. It's on the upbeat. Or it can be. Or the backbeat. So it does on the type of rhythm you're playing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move down here to the bass drum here.
Bass drum?
Yeah, a little
this thing
little
is
bass
the
drum
heart
playing technique here.
It's the heartbeat of a drum set. It's the most important drum. It doesn't necessarily play the most notes, but this is literally the heartbeat. Not like a human heart, but it's the beat. It's like, there's a song that was by Huey Lewis in the News called The Heart of Rock and Roll, and it's It's the heartbeat. It's the foundation that everything else works around in a rhythm section. And often it should complement and coordinate with your bass player rhythmically, or at least the accents should connect to your bassist. Because typically, and we know, I know you're also a fine drummer, that drummers and bass players tend to just connect, listen in, and almost their minds, bodies, and spirits become the same when they are listening and working together like that.
Right. Now let's talk about some time signatures.
Oh boy.
Okay, I know you were talking about the Jesus Christ Superstar that you're performing right now.
Yes.
And how the different time signatures during the performance. Could you demonstrate maybe like a 5/4?
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and people tend not to dance or tap their toes in irregular meters that don't end with even numbers. So the odds are a little trickier.
Right. Okay, what about like a 3/7?
3/7. Let's see. How about a 7/4 maybe?
7/4.
Da, 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 da. The Brubeck one is I'll do. Famous thing there is Dave Brubeck, the da 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 da. I think it was Blue Rondo a la Turk, and then it went into Swing 4/4 in the middle. But in the Jesus Christ Superstar score, there's a whole lot of tunes in 7/8 that are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6, 7 da 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 da. And even some of the Turkish music, the dances they do are in 7 meter, but it doesn't come normal without a lot of practice and instruction by us guys in this country because we don't think 7.
Right. Now you demonstrated the disco beat, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what about the marching beat?
Marching?
Can I join you on a marching beat?
Oh yeah, that's where we both are. Our youthful enthusiasm that never waned for drums, but
I'll follow your lead.
All right. Typical march. Ready? Thank you.
That was
sure
fun.
Was. Drummers like it.
We drummers like it, and we'll be right back. For those just joining us, we're talking to a jazz drummer, salsa drummer, all-around drummer, percussionist, Mr. Bob Breen. Bob, I know like we said at the beginning of the show, you played with some of the biggest names in the business. Could you tell us who some of those were?
Yeah, and humbly, I've had the honor and privilege of working with Sam and Dave and Soul Man.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. They were, unfortunately, a week after that show, Sam Prater passed away. He was the Sam. And that was a job booked through Walt Maddox, who's our mutual friend, who runs Pittsburgh's Marcells. Naturally, I played for the Marcells, still do. I just love the Marcells. And they did Blue Moon, ball, 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 ball. And when I was a child, I used to try to sing along with Freddie Johnson, the original bass singer. And they're great guys. And ironically, one of the current Marcells and I played in the same band when we were teenagers. We used to work a lot of we called it the Chitlin circuit down the Mon Valley. We played the clubs. We had a booking agent who I hear is still around, a guy named Dickie Wells, booked all the clubs. And a guy named Johnny Smooth was our sax player. He's had a lot of successful bands in Pittsburgh. Worked with the Platters in a show with the Marcells, because we used to be the pit group basically for everybody. Platters had who knows how many hits, and they were awesome. Worked with Little Anthony, who is awesome, who is not little. He was little when he started out. He's fabulous. Like Going Out of My Head was one of his big hits. He was fabulous to work with. And you and I both know Charlie Thomas from the Drifters. The Drifters had so many hits I grew up on, and you probably grew up on. I just love the Drifters, and I play for them. It's fabulous. They're nice guys. They're wonderful to work with, and like I'm playing with icons of the music of our day. It's fabulous. Gosh, with a lot of other groups, let's see.
Well, there was a little girl that we worked with for like 5 years, man. It turned into this great big superstar. Did you talk about that?
Christina Aguilera.
Her,
She was a little girl, and we were doing shows with her, and she had this voice when she was 12 and 13 years old. Obviously, highly talented young person who now is a mega star. I'm sure she doesn't remember those days with us.
Well, you know what? I used to tell her all the time. I used to say, "Now, when you get to be famous, I want to be your drummer," and she would say, "Okay."
But
I can't even find her now, Bob.
And then we've done shows with the Marvelettes. They're real good. There's a group called the Moonglows, had a lot of real sweet, nice tunes. Played their shows. A girl group called the Jewels. This is basically mostly stuff that Walt's contacts put us on these shows with the producers he knew. Walt Maddox, who was our colleague and good friend.
Now, a lot of those shows with those groups were more likely in a concert situation at concert halls and arenas and things like that. Now, do you play any differently, say, if you're at maybe like the Mellon Arena or if you're at a club? Does your playing style differ depending on what venue you're playing at?
Absolutely. That's a good question, because at a concert, everybody's sitting down. You don't have to worry about them dancing, and you're putting it all out there in an hour and a half to 2 hours. So you can totally play with maximum energy and survive to finish the job. When you're doing a 4-hour job in a club, people want to dance, they want to talk, they got to interact, they got to be able to order food and beverages. So you can't be as loud, and you can't have the high impact. And if you want repeat work, you're going to deliver what works in the venue, which means you're going to play more softly, probably use those brushes that we took out earlier. A lot of times, instead of the hard backbeat, you're going to play for your backbeat so that folks don't get knocked out of their conversation. A guy might be asking his girlfriend to get married, and he don't want to hear a cymbal crash and a backbeat with a rim shot. Things happen in that venue that are so different that, yes, you play remarkably different.
Now, do you have a preference as far as would you prefer to play at a concert with, say, 17,000 or a nice little intimate club with maybe about 25, 30 people?
I like the big venues. It just feels a lot more exciting. It's closer to the Super Bowl. Yes, so I like a big concert better. It's a lot more fun, and usually you go there when there's those big shows. The vendor has the sound system. The vendor often has the drum set. You show up with your stick bag. You get catered meals in the back room. They treat you good. You got water bottles around, so if you're thirsty, everything's cared for. You feel good. They treat you like, albeit sidemen aren't stars, you get star treatment because their stars really are out there in front of you.
Right.
So I like that better.
That's good.
But I like the small venue too, because you get closer to people.
It's more intimate.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, you've played a whole lot of different styles of drumming, okay? Now, do you have a favorite out of all of those different styles? I mean, do you like rock? Would you prefer rock? Or if you had a choice, would you jazz, blues? I mean, or you just like them all?
I like a lot, but I like jazz a lot. I like big band a lot. I was highly influenced as a kid. I got turned on in the 70s to the Quincy Jones albums like Walking in Space, and he had such great tunes. He had Grady Tate and Ray Brown in his rhythm section and all these fabulous jazz artists. One of my music teachers in that day coached our jazz ensemble, opened my ears to the Walking in Space album by Quincy Jones, which was a true work of art in the big band music. And I like Buddy Rich and Louis Bellson and a lot of those great players, but I also like the salsa and the Latin American sound. And I don't even know who the players are. I've just learned to hear it and like it. I learned a lot of what I got down in Miami Beach. You hear it in the bands. They don't use drum kits. They have a timbale player and a guy that plays other percussion instruments. Mm-hmm. But it's remarkable and exciting stuff. And I love jazz, rhythm and blues and funk too, because it's engaging drum playing. It's a lot of fun. And I love the drums more than I love any single form of music that the drums do.
Right, right. Good. Now, if someone's out there that maybe have some questions for you, like to talk to you, how can they get in touch with Bob Breen?
I have an email that I can be reached at because I do some teaching in my home. I have the equipment downstairs in a nice family room.
So you do teaching?
Yeah, I do a lot of practice there too to learn what I got to learn. But my email is BobbyB, that's BOBBYB 237 @yahoo.com, and I can field any interest or questions. I have room for a few more students if they can accommodate the nights I teach, if anybody's interested. And I play jobs. Anybody wants me to play their venues, I'm always happy. I learn pretty quickly. And as we discussed earlier, when you can read music, you can learn much faster and engage with the music instead of hang around somebody's basement practicing forever till you got it memorized. Mm-hmm. So anybody has drum issues, I love drums. I love talking to people about drums, love to talk about drums to drummers and other musicians, mm-hmm. or people that want to be drummers and musicians.
Right, right. Now, we talked a lot about drumming and drummers and technique and equipment and all that. But one thing we didn't touch on is, how can I put this? Preparing for rehearsal, returning people's phone calls. You know, I mean, for more of the business end of things, you know, because I noticed in this town, a lot of times, man, you call a guy, man, about a music-related business, and you don't hear from him for like 2 or 3 days. You know what I mean? And
we know the same.
We know
friends,
the same
and we
people.
know we can't go there, but we have very dear friends.
Yeah, or they show up for rehearsal and they're not prepared.
Right.
You know, and they want
to
sit there.
They don't have a pencil to make notes.
Yeah, you know. So, you know, how important is that, you know, for like, say, many of the young inspiring drummers has come up, you know, as far as like what we just talked about. How important would you say that was as far as, you know, continue to work?
Well, it's of utmost importance because I've been told by some of the people that hire me, one thing they like, I tend to show up early. Mm-hmm. I wear clean clothes. Mm-hmm. I dress the way the leader wants me to dress. I do what the leader wants to do. I don't tell him or her that they should change it. It's their gig. Do what they want. Be there early so they don't worry about you showing up. When they call you, even if you can't do the job, get back to them as soon as you can because they're grateful, and then they know, well, they'll call drummer B. So maybe Bill's available or Jim. Right. But they are business people who do music business. Mm-hmm. And you got to treat this like a business. If you don't call people back, they quit calling you because they don't know where you are or if you have any interest. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And see, that's why when we first started talking and I asked you for a resume, you sent me one. And but you had one to send because you conduct yourself that way. And and other guys that I talk to, man, I ask them for a resume and they don't have one because they don't show up. They don't return calls. They're not prepared, you know. So I guess the key word to hear is dependability.
Oh, yeah, treat it like a business.
Exactly.
It's a job. This is not my hobby.
Exactly.
I have a full-time day job, but this is my preferred industry, music.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is my good friend, Mr. Bob Breen. Hope you enjoyed him as much as I did. And Bob, would you do me a favor? Would you take us on home?
We're going home, everybody.
Come on.